Hello everyone! So the next adventure is about to begin in 2 weeks time from now. On the 14th of March, my brother, his girlfriend and I will travel to the Philippines for 3 weeks and at least 2 weeks of diving. And to start my preparation for this trip, I would like to show you now what diving equipment I will bring with me to the Philippines. So let's begin. Actually, I don't really have a specific order, so I will just show you the different pieces of equipment I will take with me. The first piece of equipment, of course, is the buoy for a safe ascent. Then the hard piece of the equipment, my octopus. My mask, always well preserved in this little plastic box, and I also just realized that the compass I've been looking for is also in this box. Then we have the torch. I think always an important part of the personal dive equipment. My snorkel, actually I never use it, but I always tend to say it's better to have one and not to need it than vice versa. My neoprene boots, which I also need to fit into my fancy fins. The Maris Extreme. On my last vacation to Tenerife, there was our dive master, our guide, telling me that these ones only look fancy and don't have any propulsion. Well, and I managed to prove her wrong. Then of course the BCD with, let me check, yes, my weight pockets. I hate to use weight belts. And of course the neoprene suit. I will use my 3mm neoprene suit here. Normally, especially when diving in warm waters, I prefer to have the shorty, but since I don't know about the wrecks there and coral reefs, I decided to go for the long 3mm just to have a better protection in any case. So this is basically the dive equipment I will take with me, and now we'll simply start to put everything into my dive bag. So this is what my dive bag looks like when all of my equipment is put in there. As you can see, there is still plenty of space left for the camera equipment, for our underwater photography, and of course my normal equipment, my clothes, I will also take with me. I mean, it's the Philippines, so very warm temperatures, like maybe 30 degrees centigrade, where I don't need that much, but I just found something which is very important when traveling to countries where spicy food is served. So you should always take wet wipes with you, and especially when eating spicy food, you will learn to appreciate the magical effect of wet wipes. So never forget wet wipes when traveling. We have just arrived in our first accommodation here in Manila after more or less like 24 hours of traveling. So we left my apartment in Frankfurt at 5 p.m. and now it's 3:30, so almost 24 hours from door to door. Now we will go outside, find an ATM to grab some cash and also some water for our trip to our next place tomorrow. And my brother just said he would like to have a big pizza here after our arrival, so I think we are also going to look for a nice pizza place to celebrate our arrival. And this is what the first accommodation looks like. Morning everyone. So the first full day here on the Philippines has just begun. It's now 7:17 a.m. My first night was quite distracted, so maybe I had 3 hours of straight sleep. The rest was interrupted by the noise from the streets, but luckily we already decided to change our rooms, so when we come back here on the 18th and the night prior to our departure back to Germany, we are going to have rooms which will be facing to the other side, so away from the main street. So what is planned for today? At 8 a.m. we are going to be picked up by our driver, who is going to take us to our second accommodation, which is west of Batangas City, and there we are going to stay until the 18th of March. We have planned to do 4 dives there, so the first in the afternoon of the 16th today, and then 2 on Monday on the 17th and 1 on the 18th, so that we still have a little bit of time left to dry our gear, then get things packed, and then we are going to return back to Manila, to the accommodation, to the Balami house where we are currently staying. So let's see how the start into the vacation is going to turn out. The forecast says 34 degrees centigrade for today, so weather-wise it's going to be very nice. Our journey to our first destination, Anilao, began at 8 a.m. We got picked up by our driver, who then took us to our first accommodation within a record-breaking 1 hour and 45 minutes. So, day number 1, the first full day, is now coming to an end. Our ride from Manila, our first accommodation, to the second place where we are staying now at the beach, took us roughly 2 hours, since our driver was very fast. So according to Google, the ride from our first accommodation to the second place was supposed to take 2 hours and 15 minutes. In the end, it was, I think, 1 hour and 45 minutes. So he was driving really, really fast. And this is how our second accommodation, the Bench-Rina diving resort, looks like from the beach. And I'm now here to record the first sunset. The first day and the first dive was also quite interesting, especially the underwater world here is pretty much untouched, so the way it was described, quite comparable to the Oman, for example. So the corals are very colorful, and there's a huge variety of different corals, also the variety of different species of fish here. So yeah, as a first dive, it was a very good start, even though we only did one dive since I got headache after the first one. So the weight I was carrying with me was not sufficient, since what I learned here, they are using aluminum tanks, not steel tanks, and I only had 4 kilograms, which was not enough. So especially at the end of the dive, I was really struggling to keep my head underwater. So from tomorrow on, I will probably try 6 kilograms just to compensate for using aluminum tanks instead of steel tanks.